The sun was merciless in the high desert. Its light poured down on a young woman crouched against the broken trunk of a palm tree. She had nothing to shield her body but a few wide palm leaves. Her bare skin glistened with sweat, blood, and dust. Clara Dawson was only 25, yet she looked as though life had already beaten her beyond her years. She pressed the leaves against herself, trying to hide, trying to breathe. Her knees pulled tight to her chest. Her long hair hung wild across her face. Every inch of her told the story of fear and pain. Bruises darkened her shoulders. Scratches ran across her legs, and a deep wound at her side bled slowly into the dry earth. This was not the first cruelty she had endured. Her husband John had broken her spirit day after day. His jealousy knew no end. He accused her of betrayal for even speaking to another man. Each time his fist fell harder. Each time she prayed for mercy. This morning the violence became unbearable. She had taken her chance, fled from the house, and then ran into the open wild, barefoot, half-clothed, desperate. She sprinted until her lungs burned. Every step tore at her feet. The sun blinded her eyes, but freedom was worth the penance. She only wanted to survive. She thought she had escaped. She thought she had outrun the monster behind her, but fate had one more cruelty. A lone cowboy stepped into her path. He was not John, yet the danger in his eyes was the same. Clara begged him to let her go. Her voice cracked. Her body trembled, but mercy was not in him. The land was quiet except for the struggle. Clara tried to fight. Her arms pushed, her legs kicked, but her strength was gone. He forced her down into the grass. Her scream rang across the empty prairie. No one answered. No one came. The sun blazed above as her world shattered again. When the horror ended, the cowboy rode away without a word. He left her broken. He left her bleeding. Clara dragged herself to the trunk of a dead palm tree. She pulled the sharp leaves across her body, clutching them as her only shield. Her skin burned under the sun. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her mind drowned in shame and terror. She wished the earth would open and swallow her. She wished the sky would strike her down. Every man had been a monster. Her husband, the stranger. Both had turned her life into a living nightmare. She curled tighter against the palm. Her tears dried into the dust on her cheeks. Her lips moved in silent prayer, not for rescue, but for release. The desert stretched wide around her. Yellow grass swayed in the hot wind. The day dragged on. And then came a sound. Hooves, slow and steady. Approaching through the silence, Clara's heart pounded. She clutched the palm leaves tighter across her chest, and her body shook. Was it the cowboy again? Had John already found her? A shadow fell over her body. She dared to lift her head. A man climbed down from his horse. He was older. His eyes carried sorrow, yet also strength. He stepped closer with caution. The sun lit his weathered face. Clara could barely breathe. Was this man another beast waiting to break her? Or was he the one soul in this wild land who might finally save her? Samuel Carter did not rush forward. He stood still for a moment, letting the young woman see his hands, both empty, both steady. He knew how fragile someone looked when they had been hurt this bad. Clara looked up at him with eyes wide and wet. Her body shook as she clutched the palm leaves against her chest. She was ready to scream, ready to crawl away, ready for another nightmare. But Samuel just lowered his voice and spoke as gentle as he could. You are safe now. No one is going to touch you again. I promise. Something in his tone made her stop trembling for a second. It was not pity. It was not demand. It was simply truth. Slowly he slipped the shirt off his back. It was old denim, sun-faded, torn at the cuffs, but still strong. He knelt beside her and draped it across her shoulders. Clara pulled it tight, hiding her wounds, hiding her shame. For the first time in hours, she felt a little less exposed under the burning daylight. Her lips parted, but no words came, only a sob, small and broken. Samuel did not press her. He helped her to her feet, careful as if she were made of glass. She leaned against him, weak and shaking, while he guided her toward his horse. The ranch was not far, a lonely spread of land tucked away from the main road, a place quiet enough that danger often passed it by. Once inside the safety of his ranch house, Clara finally spoke. Her words tumbled out in a flood. She told him about John, her husband, and his jealous rage, how every glance at another man was met with fists, how every night she feared the sound of his boots on the floor. She told him she'd run this time because she knew if she stayed, he would kill her. Samuel listened without judgment. He poured her a cup of water, placed bread on the table, and sat close enough so she would not feel alone. When she broke down, he let her cry. When she grew quiet, he waited. Then Clara looked at him with eyes full of fear. "Please do not send me back. If I return to him, he will destroy me." Samuel leaned back in his chair, rubbing the stubble on his chin. He had seen men like John before, men who wore jealousy like armor, men who believed a wife was property, not a partner, and men like that never stopped, not until someone stopped them. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the old wall clock. Clara sat across from him, clutching his shirt close around her, staring as if her entire life hung on his answer. Would Samuel let her stay, knowing the storm that might follow? Or would he send her back into the hands of the man who had already broken her once? The morning after Clara told her story, the ranch felt calm for the first time. She sat on the porch wrapped in Samuel's old shirt, watching the sun climb over the hills. For a moment she almost believed the nightmare was behind her, but peace never lasts long in the Wild West. The sound of hooves shattered the silence. Dust rose in the distance. Samuel stepped outside, his jaw tight. He knew who it was before the rider even came into view. John Dawson. He pulled his horse to a stop right in front of the porch. His eyes burned with anger, his voice louder than the desert wind. "Clara, get over here. You're coming home with me." Clara froze in her seat, clutching the shirt tighter. Shaking her head, her lips whispered no. But John's boots were already stomping up the steps. He grabbed her by the arm so rough that she cried out. The rage in his voice turned sharper. "You think you can run from me? You think you can hide with this old rancher? Everyone will know what kind of woman you are." Before Clara could speak, Samuel was there. His hand clamped around John's wrist, twisting hard until the younger man winced. Samuel's voice was calm, steady, but filled with warning. "That is enough. You will not touch her again." John tried to shove him back, but Samuel was not the kind of man to back down. At 56, his body still carried the strength of decades working the land. In one quick move, he forced John off the porch and into the dirt. Clara gasped, her heart racing. Watching the man who had hurt her now lying in the dust, John's face turned red, not just from pain, but from humiliation. He stood, spit into the ground, and pointed a shaking finger at Samuel. "You will regret this. Both of you will." He climbed back onto his horse and rode away, dust and fury trailing behind him. The ranch fell quiet again, but the air was heavy. Samuel turned to Clara, his eyes steady but troubled. He knew this was not the end. John was not the kind of man to let go. There would be consequences. Clara pressed her face into her hands. Her whole body trembled. Samuel placed a hand on her shoulder. Not saying much, just being there. And sometimes that is all a person needs. Now, folks, if you're still with me, you can feel how deep this story cuts. If you want to keep riding along with Samuel and Clara, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know, and you do not want to miss what happens next, because John Dawson is not finished. Not even close. And what he does next will put both Clara and Samuel in even greater danger. For a day or two, the ranch was quiet. Clara tried to help with simple chores, sweeping the porch, feeding the chickens, anything to feel useful. Samuel watched her slowly regain a little color in her cheeks. He almost believed maybe John would let her be. But in a small town, word travels faster than the wind. John did not come back swinging fists this time. Instead, he went into town and opened his mouth. By sundown, half the saloon was whispering that Clara had run off to lie in another man's bed. By morning, the blacksmith told it as fact. By noon, even the preacher's wife was shaking her head. It was not just ugly gossip. It was poison. John claimed he had caught his wife in the arms of old Samuel Carter. He shouted in the streets that Clara had shamed his name. Some men laughed. Others spit. A few nodded as if they already knew it was true. The worst part was John's threat. He swore that if the town had any honor left, they would string her up for betrayal. When Samuel rode into town for supplies, he could feel the stares cut into him. People he had known for 20 years would not meet his eyes. A couple of drifters muttered as he passed. One even spat near his boot. Samuel kept his head high, but his heart burned. Not for himself, but for Clara. She had suffered enough, and now the whole town painted her as something she was not. Back at the ranch, Clara heard the whispers too. A neighbor woman came by with eggs, dropped them on the porch, and left without a word. Clara stood there holding the basket, feeling smaller than she had ever felt. Her eyes brimmed with tears. She asked Samuel in a broken voice if she would ever be free of John's shadow. Samuel put a hand on her shoulder. His voice was steady. "You are not alone in this. We will find a way to end it." That night, as the lantern flickered low, Samuel saddled his horse. He told Clara there was only one man who could put a stop to this madness. Sheriff Miller, a man known for fairness, though not always quick to act. If they could lay out the truth before him, perhaps the law would finally stand on Clara's side. The ride into town under the moonlight felt heavy. Clara sat behind Samuel, clutching his shirt, praying with every hoofbeat that this was the answer, praying that justice could be stronger than rumor. But when they reached the sheriff's office and saw the crowd gathering outside, voices rising with anger, one question burned in both their minds. Would the sheriff stand with them? Or would the town already demand Clara's blood? Sheriff Miller stepped out onto the porch of his office. The crowd pressed closer, voices rising like a storm. Some shouted that Clara had shamed her husband. Others demanded she be punished. Samuel stood firm, Clara clutching his arm, both facing the angry sea of faces. Miller raised a hand for silence. His voice carried across the square. "I have known Samuel Carter for half my life. He is no thief of another man's wife. And I have seen Clara Dawson tonight. She is not a woman of betrayal. She is a woman of scars." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers moved through the air. Samuel stepped forward, speaking plain and strong. "John is the one who laid those scars. He is the one who beats and torments. Is this the kind of man you wish to defend?" For the first time, Clara lifted her head. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the night. "I never betrayed him. I only tried to survive." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the loudest voices in the crowd faltered. Sheriff Miller nodded once, then ordered 2 deputies to bring John in. The law had finally turned. And the truth at last had weight. John Dawson was taken away in chains. His shouts of denial faded as the crowd broke apart. Clara leaned against Samuel, tears streaming. But for the first time, they were not only of pain, they were tears of release. Days later, the ranch felt different. Clara helped Samuel mend a fence. The sun was warm, the air clear. She laughed softly at some small joke he made. For the first time, her smile was not shadowed by fear. In that wide and lonely land, 2 souls who had been broken in different ways found each other. Their story was not about perfect youth or easy love. It was about survival, about trust, about choosing to stand when the world tried to crush you down. And maybe that is the real lesson here. Sometimes love does not arrive in the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives as shelter. Sometimes it arrives as courage. And sometimes it arrives in the quiet strength of a person who simply refuses to let you fall. What about you? If life pressed you into the dust, who would you trust to reach out a hand? And when the moment comes, would you have the courage to stand for someone else the way Samuel did? If this story touched you, I invite you to give it a like. It helps us keep sharing more tales from the Wild West. And if you have not already, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss the next ride. Because out here in these old frontier lands, every soul has a story. The question is, are you ready to hear the next one?